Recording in progress.
Chairperson.
Mr. Nodada.
Chair.
Good morning.
Morning,
We'll start.
Chair.
Yes, we'll start at exactly 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Honorable members of the Select Committee on Appropriations, esteemed colleagues from provinces, I know in our midst we are joined by chairpersons of portfolio committees of finance in provinces, and colleagues kindly excuse my voice, I'm catching some flu. We are joined by Honorable Oliphant from the Northwest, Honorable David from Northern Cape, Honorable Pedi from Limpopo, and Honorable Musai from Gauteng, who is currently joining us from overseas. You are welcomed in the meeting, the representatives from the Financial and Fiscal Commission and the support staff of the committee. A very good morning and welcome to this important engagement between the Select Committee on Appropriations and the FFC. Colleagues, today's meeting is a vital part of our ongoing budgetary oversight responsibilities, particularly as we consider the three bills, which is the 2025 Division of Revenue Bill, the Appropriation Bill, and the Public Sector Pension and Related Payments Bill. These bills are a cornerstone of our government's fiscal framework, and their scrutiny will be essential to ensure equitable, efficient, and transparent allocation of resources across the three spheres of government. The FFC plays a very unique and constitutionally mandated role in this process, and it is envisaged in Section 214 and 220 of the Constitution, and further reinforced by the Intergovernmental Fiscal Relations Act and the Money Bills and Related Matters Act. The Commission provides Parliament with independent, evidence-based recommendations that must be considered before the enactment of any legislation affecting revenue divisions and public finances. As a committee, colleagues, we are committed to engaging meaningfully with the Commission's insight, particularly as they pertain to the 2025 macroeconomic outlook, the fiscal consolidation path, the provincial and local government funding formulas, and the sustainability of public sector wage and pension systems. Let us approach this session, colleagues, as a strategic opportunity to probe, clarify, and ultimately strengthen the integrity of the 2025 budget and its impact on the service delivery, intergovernmental equity, and developmental objectives outlined in the medium-term development plan. Colleagues, you are welcomed in the meeting, and I am looking forward to a robust and constructive dialogue between the members of the committee, members from the provincial committees on finance, and the FFC. So, Mr. Nodada, kindly confirm that we do not have any apologies from members. So far, I've not received any.
Chairperson, good morning, honorable members and colleagues. Thank you very much, Chairperson, for this opportunity. Chairperson, right now we have the full complement of the committee. However, we have an apology from Honorable Khatebe. Honorable Khatebe would like to be released at around 11 o'clock due to an appointment to go see his doctor. We also received 2 apologies from provinces. The KZN Portfolio Committee won't be able to attend due to a workshop in the legislature that they are attending. We also received an apology from the Western Cape Provincial Portfolio Committee Chairperson, Honorable Johnson. He is unable to attend the meeting, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Chair. Those are the few apologies we have.
With the apologies noted, colleagues, let me also inform representatives from provinces that they have equal rights of participation in engaging their presentations. Honorable members, let me now hand over or invite Dr. Mbava to lead us on the presentation on the 3 bills. Dr. Mbava, over to you. Dr. Mbava, I can see your name and I can see that you unmuted yourself, but we cannot hear you. Mr. Nodada, kindly check with Dr. Mbava if she's able to hear us from this side. I see her mic is unmuted. I can see the presentation on the screen, but we can't hear anything from her side.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Doc, can you hear me from this side? Maybe, Doc, you may ask colleagues that side to check if your volume, the laptop volume, is not too low, because we can see that you are trying to speak to the chairperson and the committee, but we can't hear anything from your side.
Is there any colleague from the FFC on the platform who can maybe give us an indication whether they are able to hear us from their side? Not knowing if you are currently seated at the same place with Dr. Mbava, but just an indication whether you are in the meeting and you are able to hear us.
Yes, good morning, Honorable Chair. This is Chen Sang from the Financial and Fiscal Commission. I am able to hear you in the committee. I think I'm getting from my chairperson, Dr. Mbava's side, the issue is that there is a major update on the laptop. Oh, there we go.
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Dr. Mbava.
Thank you so much. Because I think I had some challenges with my sound. Apologies to the committee. Chair, I won't take too much time. I'm just using my colleague's laptop for now. Chairperson, thank you so much for the opportunity to come before you as the Financial and Fiscal Commission to comment on the 2025 Division of Revenue Bill, the Appropriation Bill, and the Public Sector Pension and related matters and related payments bill. I'm also on the platform. I'm sure I am accompanied by commissioners who might be available, and also the commission staff. Mine, Chairperson, will not be too long because I want the technical teams to go through the analysis. But what I want to do before I give the platform to my team, just to maybe remind the committee that before the budget was tabled, the Financial and Fiscal Commission tabled recommendations on the division of revenue. And we tabled these recommendations to 3 stakeholders. One was the provincial legislatures. Secondly was to this House. And thirdly, to the Minister of Finance. We went across the country to all the legislatures and we briefed the legislatures on the recommendations. The purpose of those recommendations was to empower the provincial legislatures in terms of budget advocacy, where relevant recommendations can assist them when they are advocating for an equitable budget for their provinces before the budget is tabled. Also for the permanent delegate as well within the NCOP to also go back and also ensure that those recommendations are understood and also infused into the final negotiating mandates to inform that mandates and to inform the final mandates of the provinces. So that is the recommendations that were made at a provincial level. And then we also came to this house as well, and we made recommendations to yourselves and to the other committees as well. The objective thereof was to inform the committees on the recommendations pertaining to the division of revenue and the proposals that the FFC and recommendations that it is making. And now, at this point, the important thing is for the committee to say the recommendations that were made, and this is what has been presented to us by the executive. Is there any alignment? Thirdly, the Minister of Finance also received the same recommendations, and the Minister of Finance was only able to use one or two of the recommendations as they pertain to the division of revenue directly, according to the annexure that is on the budget review. The other recommendations that we have made, we received one or two responses from the executive, and we are still awaiting the other responses. So they are somewhere within the legislative process. So what is important then is that we are assisted by this House in terms of ensuring that those recommendations are attended to, the ones that were directed to the executive. So now we are here in front of you now. The division of revenue now has been tabled. Now that was a process prior, what I was just unfolding. Now the bill has been tabled. Now the FFC now is interrogating the bill itself. In the previous recommendations, we were making proposals and recommendations that can be used by the provinces and also by the legislators as well when they interrogate what is being presented to them. So with that, Chairperson, I would like now to move to the table of contents. Please, yes. So the table of contents in terms of what we're going to talk to you about today is essentially about the division of revenue at a provincial and local government level, also the appropriation bill, and also the macro landscape and fiscal strategy. We did agree as well, Chair, in our consultation with the Minister of Finance that we need the legislature to come in and ensure that there is a proper closing of the loop when it comes to the recommendations that directed to the members of the executive through the parliamentary process. So that is a discussion we had with the minister, and we jointly agreed that we will approach Parliament to assist us with that. On that note, Chair, I would like to hand over to my head of research, who will take us through the, I think it's going to be agenda item 3, Chair, Chen, or agenda item 4. Thank you so much, Chen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Right, this is a brief introduction or rebrief of our mandate. So it's as the Financial and Fiscal Commission, we exist in Chapter 13. Honorable Chair, members, I think this has always been in the Constitution, but I think this year in particular, what has unfolded is that it's necessary always, and it would be good to always remind ourselves what actually is always in the Constitution. In the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, FFC exists actually uniquely in the Constitution in that, and it ought to have then provided that independent and objective advice, and specifically focusing on the legislative side of oversights, briefings, and recommendations. And the focus sections of our mandate is not just on the subnational spheres of matters and financial and fiscal matters, but also what actually is across the entire budget. So earlier, as my chairperson indicated, this is not just the recommendations that we provided on the subnational spheres and division of revenue, but divisional revenue as in the entire budget and the fiscal framework, therefore affecting it. Can I move to the next slide? In terms of 214, it does require us to have principles, or has already set out principles for us to consider. And that, as I said, it's not just about subnational sphere matters, it's national interest. It's highlights there in the subsection B, the national debt and other national obligations. And one will see and understand that just how much actually national fiscal framework and strategy and budget as a whole is impacting on the three spheres of government, not just on a particular sphere, but in fact, it affects the entire fiscus. Next slide. And what is, I think, perhaps in addendum to also what my chairperson spoke about the starting of the budget process, essentially, that was our recommendations tabled 10 months before the budget being tabled, and that would have been our annual submission that was tabled last year, June. And but right now, what we're looking at is ultimately a culmination of all the processes therein, bringing up to this point, that is the budget of 25-26 financial year. And in terms of the law, importantly, also in terms of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act, it says that this committee on appropriations has the power and functions conferred to it by the Constitution, legislation, the standing rules or resolutions of the House, and must consider and reporting and receive our reports and of recommendations, including those referred to in the Intergovernmental Fiscal Relations Act. So they are all connected, is my point to drive through. Next slide. And in the IGFR Act, Intergovernmental Fiscal Relations Act, what it is, as we all know, is this the process of consultation. And the consultations of 14 days before the Divisional Revenue Bill is introduced. But in fact, in terms of the Constitution, this Division of Revenue, in terms of Section 9, actually includes also other bills associated with it. And I think we can move to the next slide and look at the other finer prints or the processes that I'd like to report on to this committee. Is that so? Following the series of the budget tables, 2, 1, 2, and 3, on 15th of May 2025, per Section 10 of the IGFR Acts, we formally, or Minister of Finance formally consulted with the Commission, and that's the draft, or shall we say the bill, let's not say draft, was received on the 12th of May. So very quick turnaround times, but we understand the uniqueness of this year's budget process. But a couple of important points here I'd like to drive in. One is that we also made additional recommendations on the division of revenue to Minister in terms of Section 10 for this budget process at the consultation. So we first of all recommended that based on what happened during this budget process of 2025 year, the finance minister needs better support from National Treasury. They should provide minister with different spending options and scenarios to choose from and be at the ready, essentially, for any changes that they need, as opposed to what had happened was one option is on the table, and then if it doesn't get passed, then it goes back for a month, and then if that doesn't get passed, it goes back for another month. It's an incredibly time-consuming process at the moment, whereas a budget, ultimately, it's a proposal. It should therefore be amendable, not with this very arduous process of amending every single instance by a time unit of a month. Second is that this issue of inflation, and why inflation is important is because it ultimately is the main reason why affordability is going down in South Africa. And as part of our State of Nation address by the President, one of the key objectives to address an issue is the cost of living crisis. And so this year, at the moment, we're seeing this 2.7% increase on the overall headline inflation, including fuel, including transport cost, everything. That is the headline. We see this opportunity, essentially, with this low inflation environment, an opportunity to reduce spending, to restructure spending within the baseline without having to be too concerned about the erosion of the real values of services, because in the medium-term expenditure framework, as it has been budgeted for, is increasing at the baseline, already at 4.5%, and that at the consolidated level, it's increasing at 7.54%. So effectively, there is real increases in terms of the budgets. There is fiscal expansion in real terms in the budgets. I don't know why we had fiscal consolidation as misdirection, but there was this great opportunity for restructuring and to relook at our efficiencies of spend. Next slide. In terms of the next is that the government needs to undertake this proper audit of the public sector employees. There is a great many number of ghost employees, and then also coming from the COVID environments, there are a lot of employees that are public sector employees that have been hiding behind the veils of remote work or hybrid work or no work. So there is a need to relook at the entire structure, count the heads, count the real bodies, warm bodies, to be effective in ensuring that the money that taxpayers pay us are actually brought to real delivery, service delivery. And in terms of the next recommendation is that government makes changes to the money allocated for health and education, which are shared. These changes must be included in the main DOR. Honorable Chair members, this year, because of the series of changes, provisional allocations to the budget has been undergone many changes. And so what we're saying is, what we're saying in terms of Financial and Fiscal Commission is that these changes, and if it affects, and it does affect, provincial and local government allocations from the provisional allocations portions, they should not actually be in the provisional allocations. They should actually be implemented through the Divisional Revenue Bill, because Divisional Revenue Bill is the bill that decides how much money through Act of Parliament can be allocated to provinces and local government for spending. Any other expenditures in terms of the public finance, it would be against the law if it's gone to anywhere to be spent without act of this Parliament. And lastly, the Financial and Fiscal Commission. So, as my chairperson indicated, the recommendations we made 10 months before, which was, if I may remind the committee, it was on expenditure efficiencies and service delivery of the public sector. And that recommendation should have been and could have been most instrumental in this, in terms of recommendations and to assisting the minister in strengthening the budget process, and as opposed to currently what has been happening is, as my chairperson also alluded to, is that there is this cherry picking, there is selective answering by National Treasury of some officials to the recommendations. Next slide. This is the fiscal cycle. I shan't go too much into it, but basically it's saying Section 9 that happened 10 months ago, or now more than 10 months. There are also Section 10 processes which we are engaging in right now. And so this briefing is done in terms of Section 10. Next slide. A State of the Nation address, we looked at just reminding ourselves, as pronounced by the President, is that first is to drive inclusive growth and job creation, reducing poverty and tackling the high cost of living, building a capable, ethical, and developmental state. There's the national dialogue that shall take place in August. I understand that there shall also be feature strongly in terms of what it should find and a channel of expression into the budget. Next slide. We shall go into now the macroeconomic landscape and fiscal strategy. I would now hand over to Gianni, but taking note that we colleagues ought to focus only on the specific bills, and as these macroeconomic presentations has already been made. However, highlighting, of course, that number one, the point is that inflation was low, or is low. And in terms of the budget, there was not a concern of erosion of, there is not, this is definitely not an issue of lack of money. There is more than enough money, more money than necessary to accommodate the cost of inflation. And so the issue right now is how one should restructure, relook, and re-audit its spending patterns to see whether we are actually getting value for money. And as opposed to having gone through to always looking at the revenue side, and we mustn't misdirect the part of spending inefficiencies to be need for more money. That's the ultimate punchline of the macroeconomics strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Honourable Chairperson and all honourable members. As our Head of Research has said, I will just touch on a couple of the macroeconomic slides as they pertain to and directly impact on the division of revenue and the other bills that are being considered today. Sabelo, if you could please move to slide 15. Briefly, just looking at the fiscal policy and outlook. Again, if we consider revenue and expenditure, the data does show that there's been fiscal expansion whereby government expenditure has exceeded consistently since 2008-9 revenue. What we would like to point out here is that there are significant direct charges on the National Revenue Fund, including debt redemptions or maturing government debt. And this essentially diverts critical funding away from productive spending priorities. And of course, here the figure also shows the additional costs of the Eskom debt relief bill, widening the fiscal gap. And then if we move to slide 30, apologies, if we move to slide 18, Here the Commission focused on the Eskom Debt Relief and Revenue Laws Amendment Bill. So with respect to the 2025 Eskom Debt Relief Bill, the Commission would like to emphasize that if we compare this bill to the 2023 Eskom Debt Relief Bill, the initial bill made provision for 40 billion rand for the 2025-26 fiscal year. And for the 2025 fiscal year in the 2025 Eskom Debt Relief Bill, this has now been raised to 80.23 billion. So while the Commission does appreciate that the provision amounts to overall 20 billion less than the total initial 110 billion envisaged in the 2023 bill, what is concerning is that in the 2023 bill, an additional 70 billion, which then totaled the 110 billion, was described separately as a debt takeover arrangement, but still planned as a direct charge. And this does create some ambiguity and lack of transparency between the treatment of funds across the two bills. And this transparency is particularly important, as honourable members know, when we are dealing with debt bailouts to SOEs, which have significantly worsened South Africa's fiscal stance. So this will be crucial. Transparency and accountability will be crucial in these bills for building greater fiscal credibility. Still, yes, thank you, Sabelo. Just finally, the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill. Here, the Commission does note that the proposed amendments primarily concern the two-part retirement system and seek to bring about certainty and conditionality on members' interests in the three components of the two-part system, namely the retirement component, savings component, and vested component. Then moving forward to slide 21, which briefly focuses then on the proposed fiscal consolidatory paths of the FFC. These proposals are based on the FFC's revenue projections and the need to reach a zero-balanced budget to restore fiscal sustainability. Here, the key takeaway as it relates to the various bills is that expenditure growth will need to be reduced over the next 3 or 5 year horizon in order to restore fiscal sustainability in South Africa. And this will depend, whether it's 3 years or 5 years, can depend on the consolidatory path followed. And in considering these proposed paths, the Commission would like to emphasize once again, as our head of research has already emphasized, that given much lower year-on-year inflation, this does present that opportunity to balance revenue with expenditure within particularly the next 5 years by capping expenditure growth at approximately 2.9% in 2025-26 and stepping down to 2.6% by 2029-30. So this would restore fiscal credibility by reaching a zero-balanced budget. Briefly, on slide 22, contingent liabilities. Here, the broad issue on this and the following slide, the Commission reiterates that there is a crisis in our SOEs and that resources are being depleted and funds are being diverted away from productive spending opportunities, which directly influences then the bills that are being considered today in terms of how revenue is shared across the 3 spheres of government, as well as how much funds are available to be allocated through the appropriation bill. So this is also why it's important that the bills under consideration today are looked at within the broader fiscal framework and being mindful of the government's contingent liabilities and guarantees provided to SOEs and not in isolation. And then moving on to the recommendations on slide 24. Here, with the focus on the bills, with respect to the 2025 Revenue Laws Amendment Bill and the Public Sector Pension and Related Payments Bill, the Commission reiterates that productivity in public spending needs to be improved. And this can be done through addressing redundant positions in the public sector and ensuring that spending is aligned with core mandates. The Commission also urges the government to expedite the commitments it's made in the 2024 MTBPS, particularly with regard to managing the public sector wage bill through cost containment measures. And here emphasis is placed on the implementation of the early retirement program. With respect to the 2025 Eskom Debt Relief Amendment Bill, the Commission does have concerns regarding the separate treatment of funds, as indicated prior, as this creates uncertainty and ambiguity between the two bills. And transparency measures are necessary to improve certainty and foster credibility. Then the Commission also reiterates its previous call in improving governance in SOEs, and this can be done through evaluating their operational models and streamlining operations. Thank you, Sabelo. On the following slide, I'll hand over to my colleague Fabrice to take you through the next section. Thank you, honourable members.
Thanks, Gianni, and good morning, Chair and honourable members. So I'll take you through the FFC's analysis of the 2025 Appropriation Bill. The 2025 Appropriation Bill earmarks 1.2 trillion for the 25-26 fiscal year. And 10 honourable members, as you'll see from the table, the social development vote commands the largest share of the 2025 Appropriation Bill at just over 25%. Now, this clearly confirms our government's dedication to social welfare and poverty alleviation through crucial grant programs. The cooperative governance vote follows with a share of just over 11.2%. Now, this reflects substantial transfers to provinces and municipalities critical for local service delivery. However, a crucial observation emerges. As you'll see in the table, votes which focus on economic development and innovation, such as science, technology, and innovation, and small business development, each receive less than 1% of the total appropriation. Now, this raises a significant question. That being, is the government sufficiently prioritizing the sectors that are vital for long-term industrial growth, innovation, and entrepreneurship? So one must consider if this balance truly serves the nation's strategic development goals. On the following slide, we delve into analysis of some of the votes. Now, what we want to highlight over the next couple of slides is that we'll be focusing and looking at some of the trends when it comes to over expenditure and under expenditure that has occurred across the 2023-24 financial year, as well as the changes that are reflected between the 2025 and 2024 appropriation bills for the 25-26 financial year. Now, we do this because we'd like to just highlight how responsive the budget has been. So where one would expect over expenditure in 1 year would lead to overspending, in 1 year would lead to a direct increase in the budget planning for the following year. So as I'll kick things off with looking at the basic education vote. Now, while the Commission welcomes the 4.3% upward revision for the 25-26 fiscal year compared to budget 2024, it's noticeable that it follows a 5.7% underspending in the 23-24 financial year. Nonetheless, the increased allocation signals a continued commitment in strengthening early childhood development, as was announced in the March 2025 budget. In the May 2025 budget, an additional 9.5 billion was allocated over the medium term for teacher retention and staffing. However, a significant concern remains. There's been a downward revision of the provincial education compensation and ECD expansion allocation from 29.5 billion in the March 2025 budget to 19.5 billion in the May 2025 budget. Now, this is over the medium term. Most crucially, an 84 million reduction in workbooks and learner, teacher, and support materials remains unchanged from what was outlined in the March 2025 budget, and this risks exacerbating educational inequalities, particularly in under-resourced schools. Moving on to defense, we observe a 6.3% increase for 25-26 compared to the same fiscal year in the 2024 budget. Now, this again follows 9.3% over expenditure that has occurred in 23-24. Now, while the medium-term allocation for the SADC mission in the DRC has been reduced from 5 billion in March 2025 budget to 3 billion in the May 2025 budget, the SANDF's 2025-26 allocation for troop withdrawal cost has increased from 1.8 billion to 3 billion. Now, this addresses a concern that the Commission previously raised in its submission on the 2024 MTPBS regarding the disproportionate fiscal burden on South Africa for regional peacekeeping missions. On the health vote, it is said it's increased by 1.7% for 25-26. Now, this is despite underspending of 3% that occurred in the 23-24 financial year. The increase is primarily for supporting medical doctor employment, increasing medical supplies, as well as continuing the preparatory work for the NHI. The Commission welcomes the May 2025 budget's provision of 6.7 billion for 25-26 for health interventions aimed at employing more doctors and filling critical health posts. This is a vital step towards strengthening the country's public health system and also aligns with what was announced in the SONA by the President as well as the Commission's previous recommendations. That said, the withdrawal of the PrepFAR funding is a serious concern, and as the Finance Minister did note, it may necessitate additional funding later this year. For higher education, there's a minimal 0.2% upward revision for 25-26, which follows a 2.8% underspending for the 23-24 financial year. Now, this modest increase raises questions about the alignment with the rollout of the Missing Middle Student Loan Program. There's been a 55.4 billion transfer to NSFAS, which is down from 55.8 billion in the 2024 budget, and this remains the same as what was outlined in the May budget. Now, the Commission remains deeply concerned about the persistent maladministration at NSFAS, emphasizing the need for improved governance, financial controls, and transparency. Furthermore, shifting the missing middle funding to loans instead of grants may also increase the financial burden on future generations. On the next slide, you'll see that the Home Affairs vote is slated for a 3% increase in 25-26, following a significant 14% overspending in the 23-24 financial year. Now, this suggests that the current revision may still be inefficient to meet departmental needs. A substantial reduction has occurred in the digitization and human resource capacitation allocation. So the 3.3 billion over 3 years, including 1.5 billion for the 25-26 financial year outlined in the March 2025 budget, has been slashed to 965 million, with only 470 million for the 25-26 year. Crucially, the May 2025 budget review did note that now only refers to the digitization component and has dropped the human resource capacitation component or the job training element from the Home Affairs vote. Now, this shift warrants focus about what the plan is to do around the jobs and training component when it comes to the Home Affairs vote. On the mineral resources energy vote, there's been, despite a 6.6% underspending that occurred in 23-24, there's been a 6.5% increase for 25-26, indicating, again, budgetary inconsistency. The focus remains on implementing a modern, transparent mining rights system and also supporting the rehabilitation of derelict mines, aligning with what was outlined in the March 2025 budget. On the police vote, it shows a 1.3% increase for 25-26. Now that follows a 3.3% overspending in the 23-24 financial year. Now, the Commission would like to urge a heightened focus on combating emerging threats like cybercrime, as well as the ongoing threats of extortion and protection racketeering that have been identified in the 2023 Global Crime Index with relation to South Africa. On the next slide, the Public Works and Infrastructure vote sees a 3.6% reduction in 25-26 compared to what was outlined for the same fiscal year in the 2024 budget. Now, this follows a 5.4% underspending in the 23-24 financial year. More specifically, the expanded Public Works program for 25-26 faces an unchanged 17.9 million reduction when compared to the 2024 budget, as confirmed in both the March and the May budgets. Now, this reduction may severely limit the EPWP's capacity to create much needed short-term employment opportunities, particularly for low-skilled workers. The Commission would like to urgently advocate for a comprehensive review and investigation into infrastructure investment returns and the implementation to remove existing bottlenecks. On the social development vote, it reflects a significant 14.2% increase in 25-26 compared to the 2024 appropriation. Now, this is despite underspending of 1.4% that occurred in 23-24. This alignment between expenditure and planning, again, points to persistent inconsistencies in grant disbursement, as well as contributing to fiscal uncertainty. So the primary reason for the increase for the 25-26 fiscal year has been the extension of the social relief of distress grant, until March 2026. Now, while the 1.6 billion for above inflation increases to permanent social grants, now that's excluding the SRD grant for the 25-26 remains unchanged in the May 2025 budget, above inflation increases for the out years have been removed, which is estimated to save 6.6 billion over the medium term. The Commission would like to highlight that it remains concerned by the continued lack of inflationary adjustment for SRD grant recipients. Moreover, the unchanged 300 million for SRD grant administration that was already outlined in the March 2025 budget raises concerns about the Departmental Social Development's administrative mandate. However, the Commission would like to welcome the May 2025 budget speed announcement that the Minister outlined that they would be exploring mechanisms to link the SRD grant with employment initiatives. Now, this aligns with the Commission's previous recommendations. And finally, the Women, Youth and Persons with Disability votes shows the largest upward adjustment for 25-26 at 73.4%. Now, this substantial revision, following 4.3% underspending in 23-24, again highlights huge inconsistencies in budgeting. Now, the upward revision for 25-26 aligns with the 550 million allocated to the National Youth Development Agency under the Presidential Employment Initiative, which is unchanged from what was outlined in the March 2025 budget. While the commitment to youth employment is positive, the budgetary inconsistencies warrants examination. So, Chair and honorable members, I hope this provides some look at some of the budget inconsistencies that has occurred between the fiscal years and also budget planning that highlights inconsistencies that remains in place, where 1 year where you would see underspending, a vote then gets the following year more money despite that underspending. So this is just how provides some view for the honorable members in terms of driving discussions in terms of budget planning and prioritizing when it comes to allocation to votes. Thank you. I'll now hand over to my colleague to go through the next section of the slides.
Thank you, Fabrice. Good morning, honorable members, and good morning, Chairperson. So I'll take you through direct charges, which is also some of the analysis that we did. So beyond the votes, our analysis also focused on some of the direct charges against the National Revenue Fund, which are nearly as substantial as the total national appropriation vote at 1.1 trillion for 2025-26. As we can see from the table at the bottom left of the slide, the provincial equitable share accounts for 56.8% and debt service cost for 38.2%. So the data also further indicates a 4.6% underspending, or one can say overspending for debt service cost in 2023-24. Therefore, the modest 2.8% upward revision from its 2024 MTF baseline for 2025-26 may be inadequate to meet our rapidly increasing debt obligations. Furthermore, we also note from that table that the provincial equitable share also shows some spending pressure, with a 3.1% over expenditure in 2023-24. As such, the minus 0.9% upward adjustment for 2025-26 may not be sufficient to meet the provincial spending needs, potentially straining service delivery. While when we look at the table, we see that direct charges for the president and deputy president salaries and the International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund shows fluctuations. However, their overall share remains relatively small. The key concern that arises in this manner is the 7.9 billion allocated for the public sector pension, post-retirement medical benefits, and other entitlements for 2025-26, alongside a 2.2 billion early retirement cost. Given that early retirement should translate to early access of pension funds and medical aid, the Commission questions the rationale for these additional provisions. Also noting that pension and medical benefits are typically funded by contributions linked to employee salaries. The Commission is of the belief that the implementation of the early retirement scheme should ideally be accompanied by reductions in departmental budget for public sector wage bills to realize actual fiscal savings, not create more direct charges against the revenue fund. Therefore, the Commission believes that this requires greater scrutiny. Next slide, Isabella, please. On the public sector pension and related payments bill, this bill aims, we first start by highlighting the aim and the state of the bill to members. So this bill aims to designate specific public sector pension and post-retirement benefits as direct charges against the revenue fund, facilitating payments predating the current retirement policy framework. However, it is essential that this bill clearly defines the responsibility of the employer, the Government Employee Pension Fund, GEPF, and the employees, with clear policies, processes, and procedures. The employer's primary responsibility must remain the timely deduction and transfer of pension contributions to GEPF. Employees are expected to maintain contributions until early retirement. Critically, the GEPF, in conjunction with the National Treasury, must manage the pension fund and Fiscal with a clear distinction between early withdrawals and genuine fiscal savings to mitigate any adverse impacts on the National Revenue Fund. Therefore, the Commission is of the view that transparency and accountability are of importance when coming to this public sector pension and related payments bill. Next slide, Sabelo, please. So, Chair and Honorable Members, turning to the Commission's recommendations, starting with those related to the 2025 Appropriation Bill. Firstly, the Commission strongly recommends that the historical expenditure trends be strictly used to inform future budgeting for the medium-term expenditure framework. This approach is aimed at improving the efficiency and responsiveness of the budgeting process, enabling the government to realize savings while also strengthening fiscal consistency, coherence, and credibility. Secondly, the Commission emphasizes that all ministers should take a closer look at their mandates and functions. They are encouraged to explore ways of integrating policies that can contribute to strategic objectives outlined in the medium-term development plan. A practical example is the integration of income support programs with the goals of the expanded public works program. So therefore, by aligning these efforts with infrastructure development, particularly in transport and logistics, the Commission believes that this will significantly enhance socio-economic outcomes and drive economic growth. Moving to the 2025 public sector pension and related matters both, the Commission raises some concerns. Specifically, it questions the rationale behind the provisions related to public sector pension, post-retirement medical benefits, and other related commitments as set out in the Appropriation Bill. These concerns extend to how statutory and collective agreement obligations are addressed. The Commission calls for much greater fiscal transparency regarding the origins of these commitments, the definition of roles and responsibilities associated with the management of pension contributions and benefits. This should be clearly articulated within the public sector pension and related payments bill to ensure accountability and sound fiscal governance. On that note, Chairperson, I would like to hand over to my colleague Sabelo to continue with the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will take you through the next section, which is on division of revenue for provinces as it relates to provinces. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning, Chairperson, and all other colleagues present in the platform. Just to kickstart here is just to remind that the Constitution has assigned functions to different spheres of government. This includes functions for provinces, which are mainly relating to the provision of health and education. And looking at these functions, you would realize that they do not generate any form of revenue. And then this makes provinces to be heavily reliant on intergovernmental fiscal transfers in the form of funding from the provincial equitable share and funding from conditional grants. And we know that the funding from a provincial equitable share is formula-based, and then funding for conditional grants is determined by it's just funding that is made available to provinces for specific or particular functions or projects that have been assigned. And then as a result of this dependence now of provinces to fiscal transfers, then we'll see that the transfers to provinces for 25-26 financial year constitute of over 41%, specifically is 41.3% of the main budget for 2025-26. With respect to some of the adjustments, as we can see in this table, it shows that there's been some adjustment that has been made both to the provincial equitable share and conditional grants. With respect to those adjustments, though they are not major, they are just minor adjustments. What we can see as we are comparing what was made available for 25-26 financial year as contained in the 24-25-24 budget and what is made available for 2026-27 comparing to what was promised in the 24-24 budget. Then what we'll see is that with respect to the provincial equitable share for 25-26 budget, there's been adjustment that has been made, upward adjustment of 0.9%, while it has been adjusted by only 0.7% for 26-27. With respect to conditional grants, again, we see that there's been minor adjustment that has been made of 1.4% in 2025-26 and 1.2% for 2026-27. But honorable members, it is key to note that this adjustment that we're talking about, or comparing what was projected to be made available and what was actually made available. But it is over and above what the adjustment that has been made for inflation. So although these adjustments appear to be insignificant or minor, but if we take into account that they are over and above the provisions for inflation, then they are not that minor. Now, this slide, what we are seeing here is that now we are analyzing adjustments that have been made by province. So concerning the provincial equitable share per province, what we see here is that allocations to all provinces have been increased in both 2025-26 and 2026-27 financial years, with exception of Gauteng province and the Northwest province. As illustrated in the graph, what we see here is that the provincial equitable share allocation for Gauteng has been decreased by 0.8% in 2025-26, while for Northwest, it has been decreased for both financial years, that is 2025-26, decreased by 0.3% and decreased by 1.9% in 2026-27. The figure here that we see here, it shows some of the grants that have been significantly adjusted when comparing 2024 and 2025 MTF. And we can see here that one of those grants is the first grant, which is National Health Insurance Grant with an adjustment. And then you see School Infrastructure Grant and then CASP, as well as Educational Infrastructure Grant. With respect to the NHI, that is National Health Insurance Grant, particularly the indirect component, this grant has been increased by 35.8% through the budget facility for infrastructure and funding for a district hospital in Limpopo. And also in this grant included is the funding for the preparatory work for the implementation of the NHI. Secondly, with respect to the School Infrastructure Backlog Grant, this one has been reduced by 8.4% in 2025-26 and by 75.9% in 26-27. And this reduction is driven by the fact that this grant will be merged with the Education Infrastructure Grant going forward. And in fact, the performance of this grant was very low. It was an indirect grant which was not performing that good. Then the Education Infrastructure Grant has been increased by 7.4% in 2025-26 and 17.6% in 2026-27. Mainly again is it because of merging the two grants, as I've indicated, that the School Infrastructure Grant would be merged with the Education Infrastructure Grant going forward. Now, with respect to the Education Infrastructure Grant that has been increased in 2026, we will see that if you will look at the provincial allocations, the Western Cape is one that has received a significant amount, or is one that has allocation revised significantly by 90% and 95% for 2025-26 and 2026-27. And then this again, as I've indicated before, is as a result of the funding for Cape Rapid School Build environment. The Health Facility Revitalization Grant, there's been upward adjustments that has been made to all provinces for 2025-26. This is as a result of an allocated component of the grant in the 2024 budget, which has been converted and allocated to provinces in the 2025 Division of Revenue Bill. With respect to CASP, there's been a significant increase of 3.4% for Gauteng and 1.6% for Mpumalanga in 2025-26 financial year, while there's been significant reductions for all other provinces. And this reduction is attributed to the reprioritization of funding. Concerning the provincial road maintenance grant, there's been a significant increase for all provinces. With, for example, here you see that the one that has been significantly increased above other provinces is Gauteng, which funding has been increased by 120%. And this increase to all provinces is due to the conversion of unallocated funds in the 2024 Division of Revenue Bill to direct provincial funding, which is based on incentive and performance indicators. Honorable members, the Commission makes 4 recommendations with respect to provinces. The first one, the Commission warns against the extensive use of multiple phase-in and additional allocations outside the PS and adjusting provincial allocations without objective or clear justification. As the Commission is of the view that this practice creates uncertainty and may lead to intergovernmental fiscal disputes. And this comes as a result that the adjustments that were made in the PS for provinces, though some were as a result of data updates on the data, but some were just discretionary, which couldn't be justified. They were just adjustments that were made. And in fact, some of those adjustments were just made to some provinces, but not to all provinces, while some were made just to all provinces. Those were not justified. So here the Commission is warning against the use of such adjustments which are outside the PS formula. And again, there's an element that has been used of late, which is a phasing in of allocation that is due to provinces instead of adjusting and implementing what the provinces are supposed to get. Then there's been a phase in for which will be implemented over maybe 2 or 3 years. Then the Commission is warning against that. Then the second recommendation says that while the Commission welcomes the incentive components of grants to encourage grant performance, it recommends greater transparency of the formula determining allocations from unallocated portion. As we've seen that there's been significant adjustments that have been made in a number of grants, including the provincial road maintenance grant. But now we're just calling for transparency on how those allocations were made. The Commission supports matching of conditional grants, which include the matching of CASP and Ilima-Letsima. And this is in line with what the Commission recommended for 2020 in the submission for 2025-26. But the Commission, however, recommends greater transparency in criteria, processes, and procedures to simplify and amplify the grant impact. And lastly, Chairperson, honorable members, the Commission awaits the development and implementation of a single electronic system that includes live health record information as recommended in the submission by the Commission for Division of Revenue 2021-22. And again, this has been reiterated in the SONA earlier this year by the President. Through you, Chairperson, I would like to hand over to Kuso.
Thanks, Sabelo, and good morning, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members. So I'll be taking you through the last section of the presentation, which focuses on the Division of Revenue Bill as it relates to the local government sphere. Mindful of the fact that the local government sector plays a crucial role in supporting the delivery of basic services, the likes of water, sanitation, electricity, and waste removal. So the ability of the sector to function effectively depends on adequate funding and sound fiscal policies. In the 2025 medium-term expenditure framework, the local government's sphere's share of the main budget is set to increase slightly, rising from 9.5% in 2025-26 to 9.8% in 26-27, before settling at 9.7% in the outer year of the MTEF. And when we compare the 2025 DOR to the 2024 baseline for 2025-26, as seen on this table, we see that Division of Revenue 2025 did not make any changes to the local government equitable share for the financial year 2025-26 and 26-27, while conditional grants decreased by 0.7% in 25-26. But overall, the local government transfers for the 2025-26 financial year decreased by 0.2% relative to its baseline in the 2024 division of revenue. Next slide, please. This slide here presents an analysis of the local government equitable share by municipal categories, highlighting variance changes for the years 25, 26, and 26, 27. And what we see here is that although the local government equitable share remains unchanged, we observe some significant internal shifts in allocations, wherein metropolitan municipalities have experienced reductions of 0.3% in 25-26 and 2% in 26-27, while category B and C municipalities have received 0.1% and 0.2% increases respectively in the 2025-26 financial year. Next slide. The redistribution that we saw in the previous slide benefits the rural provinces such as the Limpopo province and the Eastern Cape. But what it means is that urban areas, including Gauteng and the Western Cape, will receive less funding. And the point that we want to make is that while redistribution is necessary to promote equity, we must also carefully consider how these changes will impact service delivery in our largest cities where population density continue to rise. Next slide, please. On this slide, we present the percentage changes in conditional grant allocations for the 25-26 and 26-27 financial years, also looking at differences between the 2024 and 2025 division of revenue bills. The Commission notes that 20% of the program and project preparation support grant funding is split into the newly established Neighborhood Development Partnership Grant for non-metropolitan municipalities, while the remaining 80% of the grant is transferred to the new Urban Development Financing Grant for metropolitan cities in the 2025 division of revenue bill. The key cuts to conditional grants, if we move to the next slide, please. Some key cuts to conditional grants include a 3.2% reduction in the direct municipal infrastructure grant, which resulted in 245 million being reallocated to the integrated urban development grant, and an additional 225 that is made to the regional bulk infrastructure grant for the Drakenstein local municipality. There's also a 10.4% reduction in the public transport network grant that amounts to 435 million for the 2025-26 financial year, and which is set to increase by 425 million in 26-27. And this is to align with the revised implementation plan and cash flow projections for the City of Cape Town's My City program, which aims to connect areas like Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain to the city center. On the other hand, some grants such as the Urban Development Financing Grant and the Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant have seen increases of 7.5% and 6.3% respectively. And lastly, a key adjustment to the conditional grant framework is the Indirect Integrated National Electrification Program grant, which was reduced by 0.9%, and this is due to a reprioritization of 40 million over the 2025 medium-term expenditure framework, which is to complete the National Electrification Master Plan. If we can just move then to the recommendations, local government recommendations, before we hand over to our chairperson for concluding remarks. Thanks. Thanks, Abelo. So with respect to the 2025 division of revenue for local government, the Commission makes two recommendations. The first is that we appreciate the redistributive properties of the local government equitable share formula, but we strongly recommend reviewing and finalizing the new local government white paper along with the Municipal Fiscal Powers and Functions Act. And this is to effectively address the underlying issues of fiscal disparity in the local government sphere, prioritizing local fiscal powers before transfers. And secondly, the Commission expresses concern over the exceedingly convoluted conditional grants, which affect spending under capacity strains of the local government, as well as the grants evolving into perpetual mechanisms that resemble unconditional transfers that are akin to equitable shares. Chair, if that brings us to the end of our presentation, if I may hand over to our chairperson, Dr. Mbava, through you, Chair, for concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Chairperson. This concludes our recommendations on the Division of Revenue Bill and the other bills as well. We have made recommendations prior to the Division of Revenue Bill, and we are making recommendations now after the bill has been tabled. We are hoping, Chairperson, that our recommendations will assist the provinces in terms of their final mandates on the Division of Revenue. Thank you so much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mbava and the team from FFC. Colleagues, I'm going to note hands, and also I was made aware that the Portfolio Committee on Finance from the Free State, led by the chairperson, Honorable Kwabane, have joined in the meeting. Honorable Pretorius, Honorable Msinga, and Honorable Foko, you are welcomed into a meeting. Can I note hands, colleagues, that would want to engage the presentation that was just been put before us? Like I indicated, members from provinces are more than welcome to participate in the discussions. I see the hand of Honorable Matapelo Siwisa, Honorable Swart, Honorable Ryder, Honorable Majola, Honorable Brits, in that order. Over to you, Honorable Siwisa.
No, thank you, Chair, and greetings to everyone. Chairperson, let me also welcome the presentation that was done by the FFC. Chair, and I have a few comments and a few questions and a few concerns that I think I must run through the FFC and get maybe more clarity on some of those questions. Chair, the president in his SONA promised that there's going to be job creations, and that's always part of his speech when it's opening of parliament. In the SONA, there's always a talk about job creations, but when you look at the allocation of funds, the industrial development sectors, your economic sectors, there's not enough money to actually lead to job creations in this country. We speak about your small business, your trade, your public works, and all of those departments. And it's a great concern, Chair, because those are the departments that are supposed to actually assist this country for job creation. We speak about industrialization in South Africa, which we know that is going to make sure that there are job creations that are happening. But it seems as if not enough is done when it comes to job creations in South Africa. It only becomes something that is spoken about on platforms, but there is really nothing that is being done about that. So my question to the FFC would be, what recommendations does the FFC have for rebalancing the allocation of better support, industrialization, innovation, and economic competitive, and taking into consideration the statement that I've just made? And then also advise how can Parliament assist to ensure a better alignment between departmental mandates and budget allocations, particularly for inclusive growth sectors, because that's one thing that I've picked up. My second one, Chair, would go to the conditional grants, with the main focus being on the school infrastructure, the CIBG and the IEG that have been merged. According to allocations. I know I've raised those questions when the minister was in Parliament to come and do his presentation. And I specifically ask, how is this going to affect the budget allocation and the job and the employment between those two? Because you are merging two bodies to make them one. But already individually, they were not doing enough. How are you going to monitor two bodies that you've brought under one roof? And I was assured that there's no job loss that's going to happen. But I'm concerned because sometimes we are told one thing and then the next time we are told another thing. So we'll just wait to see if there's nothing that happens. But the question, that's one of my concerns. Individually, these two bodies did not do a lot. And now the allocation has gone down. And how best can we ensure that these two bodies are going to do the job that needs to be done without having them to lose any people or under unemployment, or unemployment is going to be one of the factors? And specifically, how is the FFC going to assess the effectiveness of emerging these grants like the CIBG and the EIG? And are provinces adequately prepared and ready for the shift, Chair? Because there are shifts that are being made, but are provinces ready to do that? Going to local government, Chair, I'm concerned about the rate at which our municipalities are functioning. And I think even yesterday I raised an issue to say service delivery is done at what base? And if wards do not get the funds, or if no service delivery is happening at wards, we can sit here the whole day, Chair. Nothing is going to happen because the people that we need to service are at ward-based. And if the local government is not functioning, we might as well close shop and go home, because those are the most important people. But you find that there is a 0.2 decrease in local government transfers. This is a concern because there are already municipalities that are struggling at Chairperson. Now, given the minor 0.2 decrease in local government transfers, Doc, how can municipalities sustain service delivery, and what will be the impact of this? Another question would be, how can the Commission assist in simplifying the current grant architected to support the undercapacitated municipalities? Because we are decreasing the money, but it seems as if there's not enough support, Chairperson. Municipalities are surrounded by corruption, money laundering, fraud. Every day you hear a lot of cases about municipalities and the corruption that happens there. And also the delay in the finalization of the white paper of local government is of a great concern. So for now, Chair, that will be my only questions for now. Chairperson, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Siwisa. Honorable Swart.
Hi, good morning, Chairperson. I just want to hear, can you hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. I don't want to switch on my camera. I'm here in hospital with my wife. So just a couple of, remarks and a couple of questions, Chairperson, on the Division of Revenue Bill. I think it was in slide 49. The provinces overspent by 3% in 2023-24. And yet the equitable share is lifted only 0.9%. And the question to that is, given the persistent overruns in health and education, does the FFC regard a 0.9% boost as credible? Or does it merely, defer an inevitable mid-year bailout? The second one is slide 52. Only 74% of conditional grants were fully spent in 23-24. The FFC, will they recommend withholding future tranches where provinces fail to publish quarterly performance data. The unallocated pool that feeds performance incentives lack a public formula. When will FFC publish a transparent scoring matrix for converting unallocated funds into incentive shares? Before or only after the funds move? Then, Chairperson, I think it was on slide 56, 3 overlapping agri grants still exist despite a merger proposal. What deadline has FFC given Treasury for folding Caspen, what's the other one, Litsema and Landcare into a single outcome-based facility? And 61, local government transfers dip 0.2% while debtors exceed 340 billion. How will municipalities maintain service standards? Does the FFC support a conditional tariff adjustment path linked to equitable share reductions? And then the provincial wage bill still grow faster than GDP. The question to the FFC, will they back a legal expenditure ceiling on compensation of employees at provincial level? And what sanction should apply for breaches? And then also fraudulent municipal billing contributes to 40% revenue leakage. The question is, has the FFC considered conditioning the urban development financing grant on deploying an accredited smart metering solution in metros? And then just on the ESCOM debt relief amendment bill, the debt relief vote bypassed normal appropriation scrutiny. Should Parliament amend the PMFFA to require a cost-benefit certificate from an independent fiscal referee before any SOE debt swap is tabled? And just two on the appropriation bill, on 34, industrialization objectives lack funding. Which specific votes should be reprioritized? And by how much to align the budget with Operation Bullion-Dela reform agenda? The debt service cost exceeded budget by 4.6% in 23-24. Is the FFC willing to publish a debt trap scenario showing at what interest rate shocking expenditure on basic services would be squeezed out? And then on the last one, on that one, defense cuts versus rising regional instability. Does the Commission foresee strategic risk in halving SADC mission funding? And how should Parliament weigh fiscal prudence against security obligations? And the last one on the public sector pension and related payment bill, the early, I think it's 46, early retirement scheme could front load cost. The question, has the FFC modeled the short-term cash impact of the proposed early retirement incentive? And what offsetting savings are realistically achievable within 3 years? Chairperson, that is my 2 cents in the hat.
Thank you, Honorable Swart. Honorable Ryder.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think Honourable Swart used half my time today, but that's fine. I have some fairly short inputs. I have asked the team to share this slide with us. Slide 26, that's the one, just so that we can focus on it. But first, let me start by thanking FFC for the work and the presentation done. I must also be consistent and criticise them a little bit. The fiscal framework was dealt with last week on the 11th. We passed it through the House. So your recommendations on that, although you didn't spend much time on it, but I'm not sure where those recommendations were aimed at since the framework's been passed. But I do note you didn't spend much time on it, but I thought for consistency, I must point that fact out. Now, there's a famous quote from ex-President Joe Biden's father, apparently, and it says, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value. And I think that the slide that's on the screen is very important in demonstrating that. And in responding to many of the concerns that certainly certain NGOs have raised, etc., in terms of what's being prioritized. So in terms of the appropriation bill, let's just have a quick look at that. Social development getting 25% of the total budget. That's a massive chunk going to make sure that people can survive. And of course, there's other bits hidden away in other areas that also go towards doing that. But let's look at the rest. COGTA, 11.2%, police, 10%, higher education, also close to 10%. Now, of course, basic education is difficult to evaluate because of the fact that you have a national department, but then there's a component as well that's hidden away in the DORA. So if you add the 28.5 billion hidden in DORA to the 35 billion here, that gives you what, 64 billion close to, which puts basic education right up there with health. Now, this is showing, Chairperson, that government is actually prioritizing the right things in terms of spending. It's disappointing that trade, industry and competition and small business only make up 1.1%, noting that we need to invigorate the economy. But I think that a fair amount of the budget that's hidden away in transport is also aimed at driving the economy. And I'd also say probably some of the agricultural expenditure as well. So, Chair, I think what I'm getting at is that it looks like the right things are being prioritized in terms of spending, but we're not getting the right outcomes. And that possibly is a point of frustration for me. I also am a little...
Colleagues, is it on my side or we have lost Honorable Ryder?
He's lost, Chair.
Mr. Nodada, kindly talk to him, but for now, let me recognize Honorable Majola while you're still getting hold of Honorable Ryder and informing him that he's not with us on the platform. Honorable Majola.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Greetings to the members of the committee and greetings to the FFC team, Madam Chair. Mine will start from the opening remarks from Dr. Mbava. She did mention that pre-presentation of these bills, there was a recommendation provided. My question is, percentage speaking from what we see here, and also what is being recommended on this presentation, how many percent of the recommendations were taken into consideration when we look at the final draft of these three bills? Secondly, arising from the opening remarks again, there was a suggestion to invite provincial legislatures to be part of these budget processes as it is it unfolding? I want to check whether that call was honored by the National Treasury when we're doing, in particular, the division of revenue. Madam Chair, it takes me to slide 35. My second question, it takes me direct to slide 35 as an example. When you look at both decreases in both financial year, they are the allocation share for Northwest as to when looking at the reasoning behind the decrease is due to I really am confused. I want to check as to whether the equitable share formulas is it due to the outcomes of the equitable share formula to see the drop in 2 financial year, in particular in the Northwest. The third question, Madam Chair, Honorable Siwisa and Ryder did touch on it in different tones, Madam Chair. Honorable Ryder being comfortable with 1.1% allocation to the developmental orientated vote. And he further stated that, well, it seems as if we are directing the finances where it make a contribution, positive contribution. It's true, Madam Chair. Well, social issues, Madam Chair, definitely it requires urgent attention, like education and what have you, which also includes grants. Without, Madam Chair, giving a balance to the social development issues and the economic developmental issues, we allocate 25% on social, including grants, meaning that we are in fact giving a consideration to the unemployment and inequality. But on the other hand, we will have that 26% allocated to the social development if we don't consider increasing 1.1 or paying attention to the developmental sectors like small business, manufacturing, and what have you. I was just looking at slide in front of me right now, it's slide 28. Mineral resource and energy. Well, they've underspent, Madam Chair, with negative 6.8%, which is the backbone of the economy. Mineral resource and energy plays a vital role in terms of the economic growth and job creation. But it seems as if there is no measurable plan in terms of utilizing the funds that are allocated to these in order to make sure that we contribute to our struggling economy. They've underspent by negative 6.6%. The other one, Madam Chair, it's the clarity-seeking question with regards to defense. 1.8 billion March 2025 to 3 billion that is to cater for withdrawals allocation. I'm not clear, Madam Chair. We are spending more on withdrawals by 2 billion. Well, maybe I'm reading this thing. If I may get the clarity on that. The other one is with regards to the increase from the 73.4 on women, youth, people living with disability. I want to check, Madam Chair, that jump, because also in that vote, women, youth, and person living with disability, there was an indication of a negative 4.3 underspending. Then in 2025-26, we are increasing by 73.4. I want to check from the FFC whether they are comfortable with whether they are measures in place and measurable targets to utilize that drastical change, 7.73.4. The last one, Madam Chair, is with regards to the slide 42. I've noticed that there is a reduction on both category A municipalities at negative 0.3% this financial year and negative 2.0%. I want to check from the FFC. It was mentioned in passing whether the issue of inter-immigration between the provinces when we were doing this reduction or addition in terms of the rural and urban municipalities, whether was taken into consideration that a number of people are immigrating from their own rural nature municipalities to the category A municipality. And further, Madam Chair, it's evident when you look at the category A's municipalities that they are fast approaching the rural municipality status in terms of the service provision, roads, potholes. I want to check with the FFC whether those two elements were taken into consideration when we were giving the negative growth for the two financial year. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Majola. Honorable Ryder, you may come in.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and I apologize for that. We have a major power failure here in the area. So, thank you for accommodating me. I note Mr. Majola putting some words in my mouth, and I wasn't exactly comfortable with the 1.1%. I do see money being spent elsewhere, but overall, Chairperson, I think we can agree that money is being allocated in the right places, but we're not achieving the right outcomes. And I wonder if FFC might want to talk to us a little bit about when we look at the appropriation bill, looking at some of the targets and performance.
Honorable Ryder.
That departments.
Honorable Ryder.
Yes,
maybe
Chair.
if you can switch your video off, it will be better. And kindly try to increase the volume.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I'm talking as loud as I can. Yeah. So yes, I think the performance indicators are possibly what we need to be looking at in terms of departments actually delivering or using the money that gets allocated to them to achieve proper outcomes or better outcomes than what we've seen. So yeah, I also, it is a question mark that higher education is getting more overall than basic education is getting in terms of my quick analysis, certainly in terms of what's in front of us, even when the equitable share portion of going to basic education is included. And I wonder if it's right to start at the top instead of starting at the bottom. But that's possibly a policy issue that we need to look at. Chair, then I want to move on to the Division of Revenue. Let's look at specifically, only really one question around slide 38. That massive increase to Gauteng for the roads maintenance that was indicated there, is that partly to deal with the e-tolls issue, or is that entirely aimed at the roads maintenance? I have a suspicion most of that will be directed towards the e-tolls, getting rid of the e-tolls debt, and so that might be a false reading that we're seeing on that specific line item. Chair, my last question relates to a comment that came at the end relating to the convoluted grant system that municipalities are faced with dealing. It's a difficult balancing act, I think, to meet, because we all know that the financial credibility of many local municipalities is often brought into question. And therefore, I think there needs to be a reasonable, tight handle on grant funding and how it's spent at local government. But perhaps that comment needs to be a little bit more unpacked by the FFC. And let's hear some recommendations in terms of making the grants funding process a little less convoluted while still retaining some control to ensure that there is responsible spending happening. Chair, thanks for accommodating me. That's me.
Thank you, Honorable Brits. Thank you, Honorable Rider. Honorable Brits, you are invited to make a submission.
Thank you and good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members and all our guests. Well, being a select committee, we have the constitutional mandate to be the link between the provinces and national government. Having said that, I welcome once again the presentation made by the FFC. Once again, it is very informative and very independent and objective, according to my point of view. What I've picked up is that the FFC once again raised the concern of budgetary inconsistencies, and surely budgetary inconsistencies affect the provinces as well as local government. And I also noted the call once again by the FFC for greater transparency and accountability. Now, having said that, coming to the 2025 Appropriations Bill, I just want to scroll down to my notes. The FFC made the comment that merging income support programs with the inclusive developmental goals of the EPWP program as an example, and aligning them with infrastructure development in transport and logistics would significantly amplify socioeconomic benefits and boost economic growth. Now, in this respect, I am aware that the EPW program is in process of being revised by the Minister of Infrastructure, but your concerns are shared, especially where you point out that all ministers covered by the bill should reassess their mandates and functions to identify opportunities for integrating policies that facilitate an effective framework for achieving the strategic goals outlined in the medium-term development plan. In this regard, the Honourable Rider already alluded to policies, and in this regard, I think we should share the FFC's concerns. In respect to the Public Sector Pension and Related Payments Bill, the FFC calls for greater fiscal transparency in its origin, defined roles and responsibilities in the handling of pension contributions and benefits as outlined in the bill. In this regard, my question is, what is the FFC's practical proposals to ensure transparency and accountability in this regard? Coming to the division of revenue for provinces, I've noted one concern that the FFC raised before is the use of additional allocations outside the provincial equitable share formula included in the allocation without justification for its determination. And I think we as committee should focus on this concern raised by the FFC. It's not the first time. But my question in this regard, how can this situation be rectified, and what is the FFC's recommendation in this regard? How to improve transparency? Coming to the division of revenue for provinces, the conditional grants adjustments by provinces. First of all, the presentation made mention that all provinces received significant increases for the 2025-2026 in the division of revenue bill due to unallocated component of the grant in the 2024 bill being converted to be allocated to provinces. And this appears to me as a rollover. Maybe I'm incorrect in that regard. But more of concern, and I think we as a select committee should take note, of the FFC's warning against the extensive use of multiple phase-ins and additional allocations outside the provincial equitable share formula. In this regard, my question to the FFC will be more practical. What practical measures should be put into place to counter this practice, because it has an effect on the provinces directly? In regard to the conditional grants to provinces further, are these variations justifiable through consistent performance metrics, and how can fiscal equity be maintained amid such disparities? But that also leaves or leads to the next question, that is, what transparency reforms are necessary to explain how the unallocated grant portions are converted into performance-based allocations. Performance-based outcomes, as alluded to by the Honourable Rider, is to achieve better outcomes, and I think that should be a main aim of this committee for future reference. But the following question also arises: what recommendations, and this is also a practical question to the FFC, what recommendations have the FFC made to the National Treasury regarding the consolidation of overlapping grants, such as the agriculture grants? And then lastly, Honourable Chair, in the opening remarks, the Director said that there were some issues that were referred to the Executive and that there are still some issues outstanding. Now, once again, coming back to the FFC's warning regarding transparency and accountability, what are the outstanding issues that the National Treasury has not yet replied to? And with those few words and few questions, that is my story. Fluit, my story is out. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Brits. Honourable Ndlovu. Honourable Ndlovu, you are invited to make your comments.
Thanks, Chair, and good almost afternoon, everyone. Chair, I think I'm partly covered by honourable members, except only on that question. Chair, what is the FFC's view on the adequacy of the 2025 health budget, given doctors' unemployment and backlog in goods and services? That's number one. That is on slide 36, Chair. The slide 37 is on the what it says that does the FFC, my apologies, Chair. I think it's the visuals, you are always on at home. My apologies. Does the FFC believe the funding for the missing middle student loan initiative is sufficient, given the stagnation in NSFAS allocation? I think those are the two questions, Chair, from my side. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Honourable Ndlovu. Dr. Mbava, I'll invite you to respond to members. Members, if we have time for follow-ups, you will be allowed, depending on how long the responses will be. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and thank you so much to all the members for the very incisive and quite interesting questions that are being posed. Chair, I will maybe just attempt one or two questions, and then the research team can come in as well. With regards to Honourable Majola's question on how many of our recommendations have been responded to. So at a provincial level, some of the recommendations will come via the provincial mandates in their reports that they submit to the NCOP with regards to their support of the bill, they will most probably use some of the recommendations of the FFC in their budget advocacy. And then at the Ministry of Finance, with regards to some of the recommendations, we have noted in the budget review that our recommendations spanned about 6 chapters, and the ministry responded to 3 chapters on the chapter 1, chapter 3, and chapter 5. So the other chapters are still outstanding. The chapters that we do not have any response on as yet was on chapter 5 of our submission, when we made our recommendations to the Minister of Health with regards to the efficiency in the provision of healthcare, and also on chapter 4, where we made recommendations on the efficiency of the judicial system. Chapter 2, we did receive some correspondence from the department in writing, and on chapter 4 was with regards to the rail transport, right? Chapter 2, where we received some correspondence. And then on chapter 6, which was on local government, I'm not sure, but I do believe that we did receive some correspondence from the department. This was a chapter where we were talking about local government, and the recommendations were directed to the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. That is a response. Yeah, so I think I'll pause for now and ask the head of research and the team to go through some of the questions. Thanks so much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe to quickly jump and follow up on that, my chairperson said with regards to the recommendations, it's important to note that these recommendations is not kind of just fold into an envelope and then get sent to ministries directly. It's through your honorable parliament, legislature. So these recommendations are for this House, for the legislature, to aid and assist it to conduct its oversight and duties and responsibilities over the executive. So these recommendations, actually, the impact of it is directly linked to this House, this, shall we say, determination of carrying it out through the executive branch. Because so I remember, I think it was I can't remember, but I think it was at the PSC conference, actually, Public Service Commission, that the issue is what is the difference between executive branch and the legislative branch? And I thought it was quite interesting. The way to simply to put it is executive branch are the doers. Legislative is the overseers. Overseers cannot reach in to do unless the doers are not doing. And our recommendations is to the overseers, to yourselves, honorable selves, and to put that onto the executive, the doers, to say, have you been doing this? Why? And if not, why haven't you? So let me go through the questions because it's very nice. I think Honorable Siwetsa. Yes, President promised job creation does not seem to feature as a priority in terms of the budget. The issue, I think, is, and I think this is a continuous dialogue that needs to be happening. And honestly, after 30 years, this dialogue needs to happen with the right approach. We should learn from the lessons of the past dialogues and conversation, because all those conversations and dialogues, as much as that we describe them as dialogues, they are actually promises to the people of South Africa from this government. And so and in terms of the dialogue, this national dialogue, is that is a misconception at the moment about job creation. Now, the problem here is that the jobs actually don't come from government departments. It shouldn't. It's coming from factories, it's coming from businesses, it's coming from enterprises, it's coming from companies, employers, private sector. Government's job is to set up a conducive environment and with clear and stable policies guiding and allowing, facilitating the markets. And when we say markets, we mean that so that it's an environment for factories to exist, to thrive, businesses to thrive, to get to create first, of course, revenue and value and service and goods and so forth for people, right? And then so that household can get their services and also then get jobs through these businesses, enterprises, not from departments, not from government departments in that sense. And over the past 30 years, of course, we have also tried to balance this sort of public sector, private sector job creation model. And I would say, or one could argue that I think the recent experiences of the SOEs precisely proves that point, that when public sector overreaches its influence into the markets, into trying to whether with good or bad intentions, but the ultimate outcome is that if it's not good at delivering goods and services, then it shouldn't impose itself still with such a wide and big presence in the markets through monopolistic or other states interventionist policies. That's the lessons, I think, that after 30 years of trying through the SOE model that we ought to learn. And it doesn't mean, by the way, I should clarify, it doesn't mean that SOEs needs to just be closed down. No, it's about scoping. It's about what they can do and shouldn't do, and what they can't do or not doing well at, that they need to take into account when they strategically position themselves in the market, so that it does not interfere and undermine the markets from developing. And so it has now come into what we always also say in terms of this SONA, right? How do we create a developmental or become a developmental state? That is the developmental insights and policy direction that we should be going for, and not just constantly going for one way or another based on, I don't know, a school of thought. We should look at the data, look at our real experiences, and then proceed as such. It's in Chinese. There was I think there was a saying about feeling for rocks, for the stones while wading through water. That's the way to approach, and it needs to be based on evidence. How can parliaments assist in job creation through departmental in oversight? I think later on also, I think it's exactly through it's currently being done. I see, and commendments to this parliament and to this house, is that we're not getting the right outcomes. Why not? And I'll be asking those questions and ask the executive branch, the doers, to come and account. Why have they not achieved these outcomes as desired? Because essentially what should be thought of in the relationship is that Parliament has given its money, right, has been funding through Act of Parliament to the executive branch, it should be now doing, and then it needs to come with results. And if it doesn't or hasn't or have not, then they need to explain, because you have done your part as legislature to fund this government operations as the executive branch. Provinces infrastructure, the effectiveness of the EIG and SIBG, school infrastructure backlot grants, backing actually 2012 and as early as 2014, subsequent to the establishment of the SIBG, FFC had already conducted, first in 2012, we cautioned against this move to always re-centralize and be overusing this indirect grants framework, assuming, based on the assumption, again, not on facts, but just based on the assumption that central government or national government would do better than provinces, and then local at certain things. In this case, school infrastructure development. And of course, SIBG, now that a couple of years later, we learned that SIBG as indirect grant actually has not been working. And that's why SIBG now is being slowly but surely being merged with EIG, but not without costs, because the opportunity cost of having gone through that indirect grant push and learning that, oh, schools are still not being delivered, and with working toilets and working water and so forth, then it's now 2025, we are now doing this EIG. So this opportunity cost is immense, in fact. And FFC had done, we first cautioned it when the policy position came out. And then we also conducted, through the years, series of research to say that SIBG was a mistake, going back to look at the EIG model, which is the direct grants model. And we also, as I'll speak to, as in terms of credibility of the grant framework, as raised by Honorable Ryder, is that a grant framework, especially in provinces and local government, has now become overly convoluted to the point of, and I mean, there was also a question from Honorable Swaps that, or has FFC done this, or have we published a transparent report? No, because we're not the doers, and we have asked Treasury to be transparent, because they are the doers, but they haven't done that in terms of the grant framework. Hasn't been doing that in terms of the transparent reporting, and that is a problem in terms of credibility, to the point that now, as you can see, and I'm glad that honorable members have picked it up, is that these allocations outside of the PES, these, if you ask Treasury, they will say that it's because of all these grants, and then they are moving things, and so forth, and they're doing this BIF business something facility grants framework. What is that? There's not a framework for that. This conditional grants, it has framework, it's in the divisional revenue bill. And so they stopped doing, they basically started doing things outside of the divisional revenue bill or outside of the legislative process. And that is another thing about that Parliament needs to reassert, take back the power to conduct proper oversight over these executives, because the doers are running away with their processes. And okay, Honorable Swart, some of your questions I think I touched on, but I think it's quite poignant. And the unallocated pool, I just want to get very informed on that one, because the unallocated pool works like this. It's in the divisional revenue bill, okay, but it's not allocated until the start of the financial year that's coming. So again, this is another thing about transparency issue, because this unallocated pool is almost like a carrot dangling. And supposedly, the original framework was to have a formula to say that if you do X, Y, and Z, provinces will then be able to access this unallocated pool. But how all that is determined, and there is a scoring system supposed that initially designed for this. Now that design system has now becoming a bit of a subjective exercise, and sometimes we don't see it effectively from the FFC standpoint. But again, to do this properly is that this transparency or transparent reports on the conversions, it needs to come from National Treasury, and it needs to not come from this one word, okay, BIF facility budget or process. It needs to come out as a proper report that FFC has recommended and has actually stressed to have this done. And in terms of the broader grant framework, is stop sort of messing or merging and mixing these grant frameworks and approaches. Because at the moment, between Schedule 4, 5, and 6, and sometimes even 7 schedules of grants. And there are separate grant frameworks and different principles applying to them. And yet today, by 2025, we don't see that distinction anymore. So now grants have become permanent features. I'm sure that you remember hearing us saying for quite a couple of years, grants is not supposed to be permanent. Grants is supposed to be, you spend the money, it's with a particular purpose. Once you're done, you get out and then and proceed accordingly because the service that is delivered or the objectives are achieved. No, these grants have now been in existence for past 10 years, and the framework has not changed much. And even if it's changed, going later in terms of the merging of the conditional grants, it has now become so twisted and so convoluted. Like, for example, the health, HIV/AIDS, and then now it also has COVID. It has 3 or 4 components within the subcomponents. Effectively, nobody has any idea about how that is actually allocated. Will FFC back a legal ceiling on the COE and measure for the breaches? The issue with I think before we get to the setting of a ceiling, let's first understand the nature and structure and shape of the COE. And that's why we're stressing on the COE audit, the public civil servants audit so much, because in the current structure of the estimate of national expenditure, the measures and the public finance management of this expenditure item, right, by economic classification, we found it to be unreliable. People are reporting seats, funded posts, as opposed to warm bodies. People are reporting shall we say, the strategic positions and to be achieved empty seats, if you like, and not real costs. And that's why that's why sometimes these ghost employees starts to come up, because there is just we are funding literally empty seats across the government. In terms of the debt relief bill and independent assessment, this is very interesting. I really must appreciate Honorable Swart on this one about these government guarantees turning into debt relief bills for these SOEs. Doesn't it need an independent assessment? Absolutely. And actually, it was envisaged right at the point of the establishment of our constitution, actually. Because in the constitution, and this is section 218, subsection 2, on government guarantees, the constitution requires that these debt relief government guarantees allocations to have consulted the FFC for our recommendations before it is passed. government guarantees, not even to the point of debt, right? Debt relief bill is saying that there is already debt, and there is already spending, overspending, and now we need excess cash for it. So does this mean that somewhat shall we say, a failure of compliance towards the Constitution in terms of Section 218? I think so, because of the 30 years and after a series of special appropriations, not just this debt relief bill, and also other Second Amendments, Third Amendments to the appropriation bills, this national framework has become, in terms of through the appropriation bill, has become so complicated now, and so repetitive, and it did not follow due process in terms of this Constitution, at least in terms of the 218. And of course, I don't go into the fact that actually this also touches on Section 214, which is on the divisional revenue, because the money that we fund these debt relief has a direct impact on the divisional revenue and on the division of allocations to provinces and local government. And this is why, coming to Honorable Rider, why we present fiscal framework. It's because, and also it's a lesson that we learned throughout this year altogether, is that budget, there's no such thing as this bill only or that bill only in terms of the budget process. This is one for all for one. Fiscal framework includes both the revenue side, then all that tax rates, the VAT, and so forth, those bills related, the money related and revenue laws. On the other hand, the expenditure side is appropriation bill, it's the divisional revenue bill, and all the other special appropriation bills that you see before you, in terms of including this debt relief, the relief bill. And so these two things, and also through the court judgment, actually, one should understand that the implicit message or the spirit of the law is actually that if you pass fiscal framework, effectively you pass both revenue side as well as the expenditure side bills all together. There isn't okay, I'll pass fiscal framework, but then I will maybe, touch and reduce. And because once you do any changes on the one of these bills, it immediately kicks in a difference towards the fiscal framework. It's really one for all for one. In fact, one should not even be separating or have separated this budget into these separate bills, because, and you will see also in terms of the appropriation bill, for instance, one of the direct charges actually is the provincial equitable share. That is in the divisional revenue bill, right? So in other words, they're all connected. They are all connected. So, but we are not saying that we need to go through all of it in terms of the great details, because yes, fiscal framework has been passed, but we just want to highlight that they are all connected, and that even for provinces, and we do feel sorry for the turmoil that it threw the entire provincial fiscal framework of 9 provinces into disarray throughout this budget process. But effectively, to do them also the same justice is that they need to know what is happening at the fiscal framework at the national level, and how that impacts on their provincial allocations. Are we spending on the right things? I think that is a continuous exercise. But for example, social development, as important as it is, but we as a FFC, we don't understand. We looked at the numbers, we don't understand the 300 million for administrative cost of the SRD. The assumption initially of the SRD was that we already have a very good, supposedly, very good social safety network and a social safety net dispensing mechanism because of the child support grant and the old age pension, pension grants and so forth. Why are we spending an additional 300 million just to issue these grants? So there is this question about spending on the right things. This question can be applied to all of it in terms of including even that when we thought might be spending on the right thing, like social development, because these and the answers to which will get to us closer at least to answer the question of the why we are not getting the right outcomes. Because we had certain assumptions, we spend money on it, we're not getting it. There must be something wrong in the process of deciding that we will be focusing our resources on it. Honorable Majola, percentage, you asked for a percentage, so we must come with to you with a percentage. Unfortunately, I think the percentage of adoption in terms of, and by the way, adoption not of the recommendations, not to us directly, but it's actually to the legislature. As I said earlier, the recommendation is handed over to you, to the legislature. It's about the single digits, because, for instance, even this fiscal framework at the beginning, right, and that took us through the process of the VAT increase and this increase and that increase. Effectively, honorable chair members, I think it's because they didn't take our recommendation serious at the end of the day. And I think honorable members knows this, and how to deal with it is really we have to work together and us assisting you with these oversight questions that ought to be put on the executive branch to ask them why have they not taken the recommendations seriously. Because, for instance, the debt service debt trap issue, we did do a research, macroeconomic research on it, and we did find a turning point, a threshold basically of debt service debt to GDP point, where beyond which we will basically forever be trying to catch up with more spending on interest cost to sustain that debt. And that was about 45, 46%. So we are way past that, clearly. But what the question now, given the research, and it was tabled in Parliament, why hasn't it been considered and taken into implementation in terms of the budgeting framework and the fiscal framework going forward? But that was almost 4 or 5 years ago that we published that piece of research showing that the turning points, the threshold of sustainability is at 47% of GDP, debt to GDP. But noting also that before we say that there ought to be a debt to GDP ceiling, in fact, in the same research, we also said the point is not about debt to GDP. The point actually is about the debt service cost, because that is the current expenditure that's piling up over and beyond the expenditure or the affordability limits of our revenue, fiscal revenue capabilities and capacity. Honorable Brett, pension contributions, I just want to answer this one because this one is ultimately, and it's the same answer we gave to the standing committee, because we frankly don't understand, and it's not transparent how this early retirement and provision had to be in existence in terms of the provisional allocations. Why? Because understand that in terms of the GEPF policies and employer-employee relationship of the salaries and compensations, is that employee and employer are supposed to have made contributions to the GEPF through and through to build up its pension, right? Its pension amounts. Early retirement and any withdrawals earlier, that money was supposed to come from GEPF, not from the employer anymore, because it's supposed to have been contributed. If you want to compensate for that, that is also should be coming from GEPF, because GEPF is a fund. It has reserves. It had a cumulative amount of all the employees in the public sector. So this amount is supposed to come from GEPF, and GEPF is swimming in money. There is no reason why they can't afford that early retirement, even if it has to be. Because don't forgetting that this money actually has been used for investment purposes. So it has been generating returns. And so it doesn't make sense for government employer to still have to make an extra provisional allocation, direct charge on the fiscus to support this provision. But it's more of the actuarial exercise, which as FFC, we were happy to receive such a report to explain to us how and why it's going to cost us additional on the fiscus to fund this, since GEPF has that reserve, has that, and it actually has all the information it needs and the contributions it needs to calculate, to come up with this early retirement costing. And it does need to be brought up to the table so that it does not become just another drawdown on the fiscus based on some assumptions about, oh, we're going to need more money for that, so we must fund it. No, it needs to be justified. Everything needs to be justified. Honorable Chair, I hope that is the overall issues, and if there be another second round, I'll be happy to come back.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. If there are any further questions, these can be sent to us as well in writing. But for now, we want to pause here and hand over back to you. Thank you so much, Chair.
Honorable members, thank you, Dr. Mbava and the team. Honorable members, do you at least have a short follow-up question that you may want to ask to the FFC? Just a minute, Honorable Majola. Honorable Majola, just 1 minute. You may come in with your follow-up. And like Dr. Mbava has already mentioned, those with other questions may put them into writing and send them to Mr. Nodada, who will then send to the FFC, and they will be responded to accordingly. Honorable Majola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick one. Thanks to the responses, in particular regarding the debt servicing cost, that there were some suggestions as to how are we going to restructure the debt servicing cost. Maybe, Madam Chair, as a suggestion, I will put it in writing. Maybe we refresh ourselves in terms of what was contained in that alternative plan in terms of servicing cost, as it constitutes the debt largest expenditure. I don't know, maybe we can suggest that can be presented to us, or we can write individually. Maybe we can see what was contained to that plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Let me take this opportunity to thank the team from the FFC, honorable members from provinces, particularly provincial portfolio committees on finance, the support staff of the committee, the stakeholders present with us today. Thank you very much for the progressive deliberations that took place today, and thanks to the FFC for their insight, which they are forever available to advise the committee and give recommendations, and for availing themselves whenever they are invited by the committee. Thank you very much, colleagues. This brings us to the end of our meetings until we meet again next week. Thank you very much, and a good afternoon to all of you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.